Good morning, folks. We're just kicking off today's Synozur webinar on the Agentic GTM Stack. My name is Chris McNulty. I am our Chief Technology Officer here at Synozur. Just a little bit of background about me. I spent nearly a decade as Senior Director of Marketing at Microsoft, where I was responsible for both sustaining and launching products like SharePoint and OneDrive and Teams and Viva, Syntax, and Copilot. In addition to that, I spent many years as Chief Technology Officer at Dell Software, which is where I first became a Microsoft MVP. A little bit about us. Synozur is primarily, you might think of us as a management consulting firm. We help organizations who are navigating change. And the biggest change that we're seeing organizations grappling with these days is AI. AI is transforming not just how we do our day-to-day work and our core productivity, but it's redefining industries and businesses. And we think responding to that is a fundamental imperative for the organizations that we help around the world. One of the key places where that seem to keep coming up for us over and over again is in go-to-market. When we survey our clients, and these are just some of the clients that we've worked with over the past several years, we know that the disruptions in the market are creating both new opportunities and new challenges for how you define what your mission is in the market. How do you communicate it to the world, and how do you connect that communication in a way that drives business for your organization? So we're going to spend the next 40 minutes or so walking through the current state of those affairs. We're going to start by talking about AI in 2026. So AI keeps rapidly evolving, and it's hard to keep focus on what's changing from year to year to year to year. And as much as we saw 2025 becoming a year where agents started to move to the forefront of people's mind share, the major trends that we're watching in 2026 are around work units and being able not just to ask AI to do something for you, but to rely on it to do things without being told every step along the way. Models are getting more powerful, agents are becoming more interactive, but the biggest trend we're seeing this year is what's being called Cowork, or repeatable skills. Skills blocks allow you to define a common set of capabilities that you intend to call over and over and over again. And so with skills blocks, you can define the rule set for how are you going to engage customers? How are you going to draft social content? How are you going to prepare PowerPoint briefings? All of those rule sets can also include places to go for information. What are the styles? What are the brands? What are your voices? Those skill sets are packaged as text files that can be exchanged across multiple organizations, across multiple people. Those skills files called skill.md can also be swapped between Claude Cowork and Copilot Cowork. So when you're seeing skills that are out there, regardless of whether they started in one environment, you can usually fairly easily bring them over into the next. When you go on social media, you will see a lot of skills being shared. And one of the most common ones that we've seen in the past several months are all the folks who would like to talk to you about how you can now use skills to fully automate the process of your business development. And you'll see claims out there about how people can wire up a few skills, turn it on, and overnight it will contact 4,000 people for them. And in the morning, they'll have 50 prospects and 10 booked calls. That's a wonderful idea. Reality is somewhat different. For tools like LinkedIn, um, LinkedIn imposes some real requirements on how much automation you can use. And they tend to look down upon any person who seems to be generating more communications in a day, too many contact outreaches. If you're trying to connect to 500 people a day or send 1,000 messages a day, those are red flags that sit outside of their terms of service. LinkedIn bans the use of automation to work directly with their services. And so Most of the times you're seeing people wire up those skills, they are using what I would call gray market MCP servers. MCP servers are tool sets that allow you to interact with different data sources and different activities from the comfort of your AI chatbot. And there are MCP servers for Microsoft. There are MCP servers for Salesforce. There's MCP servers for just about everything out there. But there is no official MCP server for LinkedIn. Those generic outreach elements can get your accounts banned from the major social providers. They also run the risk of looking too generic. Regardless of whether you're using technology to detect AI, most people have seen so much of it these days that they know what looks like bad AI. And so be very careful about the promises that you can, in 5 minutes, automate $100,000 a day worth of business. There is no substitute for doing the actual clicks and shoe leather and relationship building. And of course, you can't get anywhere if you don't really understand who you're do- who you're working with and what your core services are. Those are two elements we're going to talk about as we get through the next 40 minutes or so. So the Anthropic team has, I think, moved to the forefront of defining how skills can be used and reused across an organization. And for many casual or small businesses, Claude Skills became a very practical way to get to scale at certain activities. The advantage of bringing it into Microsoft, especially with the Copilot Cowork harness, is it's the same harness. It is the same framework that allows those markdown text files to be acted on in long form. In addition, because it's running inside Microsoft, you get all of the security advantages of running in the Microsoft framework, as well as access to Work IQ. So, Work IQ is Microsoft's intelligence layer that can dynamically figure out in context what content is going to be most appropriate to consider for AI. Historically, people have talked about things for Microsoft like the graph, but in practical terms, that means that a skill can understand in context how you communicate. It can examine your email history, your chat history, and be able to understand what sounds like you. When you're communicating with Contoso or Fabricam or you pick the company, it also knows what the history has been, who you've spoken to, what's come up before. So you can bring far more intelligence into the context of those communications to make them business ready. Anthropic can be a great place to get started, but the Microsoft harness, which it shares with co-developing with Anthropic, allows you to bring the security, reliability, and predictability of your business context. It's important to remember a skill is different than a prompt. A prompt is typically run once. A skill can run on its own. It has many attributes of being agentic, and you can ask a skill to run itself every night to look for new prospects, look for new news, look for new topics that you might want to market, look for changes across your client organizations, and more. So it's not just that skills can do things, it's that a skill can understand a process and you can hone a skill through your own use of it. You can tell Copilot Cowork based on your past results that you would like the skill to change the colors of your graphics, or you would like the emails to be shorter or longer, or to reference a new product line. And it will dynamically adjust those text files. You can also go in and adjust the skill.md files yourselves, something that we're going to be showing you here in just a few minutes. The advantage of skills is as we move from individual to business, those business skills, as they're rooted inside of Copilot Cowork, they're grounded in your enterprise content, in your systems, in your reliability services, and they operate in a governed framework. So you can trust that your AI skills are not going to run amok and take over the world and do things that you don't know. At Synozur, we take human accountability as being one of our core values. And as you'll see as we go through this, We think it's very important that there's a click stop, but when AI drafts, y- we review, finalize, and send communications. AI can accelerate things tremendously quickly, but without that human in the loop, as people like to say, you run the risk of generating content that people just don't react to. We've all seen things that are littered with M dashes, that it's not this, it's that. All of the tropes of AI generated content are things that get in the way of human authenticity. And one of our best selling features when we are positioning products and services, regardless of who you are, is being your authentic self. AI can bring scale, but AI does not bring humanity. Only we can be accountable for the humanity that we bring forward. And when we don't do that, the result is AI slop. When everything that you write is talking about um, unlocking your potential, when your AI doesn't read the room and it starts to ask for meetings before it's even asked someone what their pain point is, when the outbound copy looks like it's full of hyperbole and exaggeration without the basic humility, that's what happens when humans are not in the loop. The last mile of communication should not be the fastest, it should be the slowest. And you'll see as we walk through this, whether we're looking at it from a Cowork perspective or from an even more fully automated perspective, we believe it's making sure that humans are involved throughout the entire process is the way to drive the best results. That human authenticity is your moat. The things that you uniquely know, as expressed in your communication, are the things that differentiate you and your company from others. The last thing I'll note about this, and it's something that we wrestle with a little bit at Synozur, um, high volume marketing was very in vogue 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. And if you are doing something that is truly reaching 15 million potential buyers, running at scale is probably the way that you need to be. However, many organizations are not running at scale. Many organizations are reaching a target market where there may only be 10,000 buyers, 5,000 buyers, 200 buyers. And if you have narrowed your focus to differentiate yourself and you're in one of those small markets, do the math. An organization that is promising to send 2,000 messages a day to your buyers is going to be hitting each of your buyers 20 times a day. You will burn out your prospects. You will burn out your reputation. Being able to make sure that you can tailor and focus your communication to run at the scale of your market is essential. So we're spending some time talking about the market. I want to just explain a little bit about the Synerger philosophy for how we help not just ourselves, but our clients craft their market strategies. Fundamentally, marketing has been described as the way that we turn ideas into businesses. And I have spoken about this around the world. Marketing has two essential roles. First and foremost, it connects marketing to your products. Marketing is listening to customers, to signals, to what's happening in the larger world, being able to find those unmet needs and bring them into your organization. Being the expert on your market is the first part of that marketing journey. The second part, once those products are created, it is more than just a technology. The final mile of creating a product is the role of marketing, whether it is naming or packaging or pricing, being able to turn disparate goods and services into a cohesive whole and bring that back to the people who need to use that service to communicate the value and being able to do it in a way that signals that there's an opportunity for them as well as for you. So marketing is bringing market information into the product and then bringing the product back out to the market. Two key tools that we use that we preach about a lot, and we're going to look at them briefly here today, are the messaging and positioning framework and your ideal customer profile. So the messaging and positioning frameworks are not just paperwork. As you'll see is when we start to go through the process of working with any of these systems, AI is going to ask you, who are you trying to communicate with? What are you trying to communicate? And it will amplify what you give it. And if you give it nothing, nothing times a large number is still nothing. So let's start by talking a little bit about the messaging and positioning framework. For us, this is a core document that we use and that we help our clients and customers shape. It defines what the organization is. It uses common language to describe your products and services. It has descriptions of your organization and services in audience specific language. It reflects your unique brand voice. It has short, medium, and long forms, and it has rules about what language you should use and what language you should not use. On the left, you can see a quick excerpt of something from Synozur's own messaging and positioning framework. We're an AI native advisory firm for founder led and private equity backed CEOs and boards. We focused who we service and we reflect that in our language. Part of the reason for doing that is also to get to consistency and reuse. I like to talk about what I call Sunday morning discipline. Do you ever watch the Sunday morning talk shows when someone is launching a new program for, typically this is political, it's with the government, but there's message consistency. And so, regardless of which network they're on or which particular lobbyist or congressman or senator or president is speaking, they're using the same language over and over again. There's strength in repetition. And so that ease of reuse means, for instance, when you're writing a blog post, you don't have to think again about just defining in the last paragraph who you are and what you do. It already exists. And a messaging and positioning framework is also a living and breathing document. If you've never written one, it's time to start. If you wrote yours 3 years ago, it's time to re-examine it. We tend to adjust ours at least twice a year based on the signals we're getting from our market, what's connecting, what's not. And so the more you use it, the better you get at it. One of the things I've observed is when you are at a live event, at a conference or a trade show, the more you have to say something, the better you get at it. You determine quickly what sounds funny or unwieldy coming out of your mouth and what people tend to react to. And it's that dynamic process of using those messages over and over and over again that helps you refine what goes into it. The second major part is the ideal customer profile. So, an ideal customer profile talks about what are the organizations and what are the roles in those organizations who you need to communicate with, who are going to get the benefits of your business outcomes. Those are the people to whom you're targeting your marketing work, your sales work, and your product discovery work. An ideal customer profile will typically not just be a list of job titles, but it'll talk about the industries and markets that are involved. What are the sizes and complexities and typical operating challenges of those businesses? Who makes decisions? Who buys? Who benefits? And how do they evaluate success? And so on the left, you can see a typical ideal customer profile, at least a thumbnail of one, looking for a mid market CEO of a rapidly growing company. We've got some numbers about how many employees, how much revenue. That's something that usually is honed by knowing who you connect with the most. It also helps you refine your outbound messaging. We're not looking, for instance, at social media marketing today, but if you go into LinkedIn or any social media targeting platform for any sort of paid placement, unless you can narrowly define who you're going to be trying to reach, you're going to be looking at a pool of 100 million, 300 million possible prospects. And unless you have unlimited financial resources, and hint, no one does, you're going to have a hard time getting a message out in front of each of those people. Whereas if you can tune that message to specific roles, specific industries, specific geographies, it's much easier to find a smaller group and get concentrated effort by working against those. So those are the core elements of an ideal customer profile. And so what we're going to spend a little bit of time showing you over the next few minutes is how we see the four major arcs of doing something with the market. The first is core market research, and we'll show you ways that you can learn what's happening in your market interactively and on an ongoing basis. Secondly, marketing. How do we aggregate that market intelligence with our products and use it to communicate messages that go back out to our target audiences? The third, sales and business development. In addition to what we're doing with marketing, which is general, how do we reach the specific people that we want to build an outreach towards? And the last part is product management. With all of those signals, what do we bring back in to understand where our product is and where it should be headed? We're going to spend a little bit of time looking at each of these things, both in an interactive co-work mode, as well as one of the tool sets that we use with our clients here called Orbit. We'll take a look at in just a couple of minutes. So the first example, and it's a fairly common one, is how do we use interactive AI tools to be able to learn more about the market? And for this example, we're actually using a real company, Cascadia Oceanic. It's one of my companies. It is my personal photography business. And it is a business to consumer market. So it has a little bit of different attributes than the regular commercial market, but it's real. You can think of it as our personal Contoso, except this happens to exist. So in this example, let's go into M365 Copilot. And we're going to go into the researcher agent. And for those of you who are not familiar with it, the researcher agent is a system that we can use inside of Copilot where I can do long form analytics that understands where to go and how to look up things in more detail. So the example I'm going to give it: research the market for Cascadia Oceanic. I've given it the URL, Pacific Northwest photography business. Look at buyer segments, purchase triggers, local competitors, positioning gaps, partnership channels, and campaign themes. Cite your sources. If I wanted to refine this further by looking at particular websites or agents that I wanted to connect in, I can. If I wanted to say, I want you to be able to use a browser to go look things up, we can do that as well. We pass that search in, and we can see right now that my search is looking externally. If I want to turn search to look at my internal sources, I can turn that on as well. And it's asking me some general questions about what this is, where the market is. I can answer this, but I can also show you, from having run this before, the typical results that you're going to get are going to look like this. Here's a market read about what we do. We do story first telling. We've got a photo pairs voting concept. Here's the opportunities. Here's who you should be thinking about: local homeowners, local remodelers, people who identify with the Pacific Northwest, impulse buys at art fairs, along with additional things about why people buy, who some potential competitors are that we should be thinking about. And by the way, the photography industry, um, as I've been exploring it over the last several years, it's not that competitive. It's pretty collegial. So trying to bring a hardline competition and price wars is not really the way that you want to go about this market. But I can do some fundamental market research right here. I can also jump into Cowork. And so with Cowork, I can do longer form activities. And so let me show you one of those examples right here. Okay. So now I'm inside Cowork. And so I mentioned earlier that you've seen lots of skills that are out there that you can find publicly. And so I have taken a number of skills that originally began as Claude skills, and I have ported them over into Copilot Cowork. And so this is, by the way, you're looking at the directory where I have an interlocked set of capabilities that knows how to do things like write copy and brand decks, and also how to install the skills in the first place. And so this skills library, because it has other skills that are defined, has a master skill that will take you through and figure out that what do we want to onboard for each area. It will check to see what information we have that's out there, um, and being able to initially determine, based on information that's available to me personally, what my company is, what my product is, ICP, at least construct an initial perspective on each of these elements: the value prop, the proof points, the brand voice, the channels, any assets that are out there for brand. And then it's going to start to walk through, see what it has, and ask me to confirm things. As we go through this process, if I already have my ideal customer profile and my marketing, messaging, and positioning frameworks defined, it's going to be much easier to get to cut and paste. If I also know where my brand assets are, what are my logos, what are my colors, what are my fonts, it's going to make that process much simpler. And so this exercise, to get this out of the way, the initial part of the onboarding is going to say, help me onboard the skills inside of this harness. If you download this file and put it someplace where Copilot can get to it, it will be able to analyze all those files, run through the details, and figure out what it needs to do. So in my environment, these skills have already been onboarded. It's gone through an exercise. It has asked me to contribute some of my emails. It's asked me, where do my brand assets live? What is what are my marketing messages? Who am I trying to reach? So all of those things inform my particular use of the skill. And when you onboard the skills, it will tune itself to your own environment. So I can create a new task. And in this example, we're going to look at um, a recent news article that came up. Um, Let me call up an example of that. Because one thing I believe in marketing, it helps to be timely, being able to share information that's going to be relevant to the audience without necessarily finding out any other information. So here's a recent article you may have seen last week that OpenAI was trying to do some benchmark testing. And they removed a few security thresholds on one of their Sol 5.6 models, which immediately figured out how to get outside of OpenAI's lab and go out and find other GitHub repositories and look up information about benchmarking so it could tune itself. Um, that's what this article is about. Understanding this kind of governance is something that we think is important. So I can come here into Cowork and I can say, and I've typed this in already, develop marketing materials for me based on the recent OpenAI security breaches as covered at, and here's a reference to where this lives. And so the skill, which has already been onboarded, knows what my voice is and knows what my brand is. And it's going to go out and walk through that material and figure out what it wants to do. And again, rather than have us all sit here, um, we can jump and see what those outputs are. So it went through, it read the web, it did additional research for CNBC, Politico, MIT. It understands what this is. It asked me a couple of questions. What are you looking for? And I said, I want to see a LinkedIn post and a slide deck. And what angle should the materials take? And it offered to build them. And a couple of minutes later, ta-da, as they scroll down, it's drafted a post. Everyone's reading this as AI went rogue. That's the wrong frame. Here's what actually happened. This is a first draft. It's also built for me a graphic that I could attach to LinkedIn, the benchmarking paragraph. And it is also built for me a PowerPoint if I wanted to use this for an online presentation. It knows what my brand is because we taught it that during the onboarding of the skill. It knows what my voice is, so it knows how to build a draft for me. You could automate this further. You could fully automate the posting of this, and there's ways of doing that. But you can see some of the ways that I can start to build market intelligence. We have a different set of skills that look for sales development. And so in sales development, we can onboard an interlocking set of skills that, again, will understand what my products are, will understand what my voice is and who I'm trying to communicate with, and then can go out and do research based on publicly available web sources, or if you have other research databases out there for you, it can do that. And so in this environment, let's assume we're going to be hosting a dinner next month here in Seattle. And since my sales skills are already onboarded, I can just say, I want to drive a conversation with IT leadership in financial technology about how Cowork skills can change token economics. Find candidates for us to engage. The site is here. We push this through, and it's going to sit and think about this. And this can take 5 or 10 minutes, but it will come back and it will tell me 7 to 10 people it thinks that I should talk to based on this. It's a great initial set of research. And based on what you have going in your environment, you can have that research saved as an Excel file. You can have them saved as text files. If you have an integration into your CRM system, you can have that information pushed back to HubSpot or what have you. The end result of doing this with a Cowork skill is going to look something like this. It's found 16 verified Seattle metro area tech companies with named leaders. It's disqualified a few people. It's built a candidate tracker for me. I open this up. It'll show me the research that it did this morning. And I do not believe that there should be anything that goes out without interactivity. But if I said draft an email to Danny Fields, I don't know who that is. Don't have a relationship right now, but it will come back. It will go through this and create the initial draft. We believe fundamentally, although Cowork can be told to automate and prove to automatically draft and send messages, that every outbound email, every outbound communication should have a human review before it goes out. So it's going to think about this. It's going to come back with a draft, and it's going to leave it in my drafts folder. So that's a quick review of what's going on with the art of the possible when we are using Cowork skills. If you were running this inside of Claude itself, the process is quite similar. You'll have to probably, I know from experience, you have to give it specific uploaded examples of your emails. It doesn't have the same work IQ based discovery to be able to intelligently harvest that information from your enterprise content, but similar process will carry forward. Okay. So we looked at researcher, and let's get the slides moving forward again. The other approach I wanted to illustrate for you all is one that we use a lot is we've taken many of those skills along with our own guidance and intelligence to build our own platform that uses AI to provide even greater automation and orchestration around many of the principles that we have. And so for us, it's a platform that we have that's called Orbit. Orbit is not is going to look like a product. It isn't really. It is a platform that we use both for ourselves and with our clients that represents our frameworks, our best practices for how you design marketing plans. How do you build an ideal customer profile? How do you build a messaging and positioning framework? It has ways of drafting them, but also it has ways that we can generate them and upload them inside of there. It runs market intelligence for us. It's able to craft marketing. It's able to craft sales programs, and it all works from the same set of information. So Orbit for us began with a demo I was given over 2 years ago from a software platform that didn't work, that offered to say, start from a single URL and to tell you who the competitors are, what the market looks like, what your actions should be, design go-to-market plans, and so on and so forth. This was 2 years ago. I was intrigued by it. And unfortunately, the company that made the outreach called me a week later and said they couldn't make this work. And in the world of AI assisted coding, it's been easier for us over the past year to take that on. And so Orbit for us fundamentally begins with that, understanding what's going on in a given market. How can I get intelligence about what's happening there? How can I use it to help me understand how I should communicate, what I should do, who I should communicate with, being able to create those initial drafts, and then being able to generate things like battle cards, like marketing programs, like sales outreach, and being able to bring all of those things together for us is essential. And so, what we're going to spend a little bit of time looking at inside of Orbit is what that looks like for us. And so, this is Orbit from the perspective of Cascadia Oceanic, again, a real company. Um, and I can go and see what's going on at my top level summary. I can see, let me blow this up for you all. What are some signals across the competitive market? Who are some of the photographers that are out there that we want to pay attention to? What are some things that might need attention? Um, how am I doing in terms of my market message? How do I position myself, both in presence and innovation? What are some of the key signals that I'm getting on? All this is automated for us. So if I want to start doing research, one of the things that we make it pretty simple to do is being able to add competitors. So if I wanted to figure out who my competitors are, I can ask it to dynamically suggest competitors, or I can feed one in directly. So in this case, um, here is another photographer that we can add, put the website in, start tracking it. We can say, I want you to go take a look at the website. I can say, run it now or schedule it tonight. Do I want it to refresh itself on a weekly basis? And so that will give me intelligence about um, that new site. And if I wanted to learn more, I can look and see, here's one that was already been analyzed. This was analyzed yesterday. Mark Adamus photography. What are some of his key messages? Um, again, the landscape photography area is not that competitive, but our industry is, and don't want to show sensitive information for us or some of our clients, which is why I'm looking at this. And then I can use this information on an automatic basis to check things like how are we doing overall in the intelligence feed. So being able to digest what's going on in the market as a whole. And so looking at all of the signals by going out and looking at socials, by going out and looking at everyone's digital footprint on webs, on blogs, and so forth, we can see fundamentally this week there was some product diversification. Um, Mark Adamus launched a premium limited edition collector's book representing 25 years of change. Alex Noriega did some content marketing momentum with some of his magazine placements. And I can see what some of the major themes are going on in the market, moving beyond prints, looking at content marketing, revenue diversification, and more narrative things. What are the risks that I want to think about? And I get a full summary of what's going on in that. And I can come in here and read that as well as have that being automated to me. And if I don't want to just read, if I just want to look at things, I can look at some visual trends to see how information is going in this environment, as well as what are some of the places where we're seeing our scores trending. So we can see what our overall score trends have been across this environment. When you were looking at a much more dynamic market, when we're looking at Synozur itself, where there are a lot of companies who work in the business transformation space and the AI space, you see an even richer set of signals. So inside of this, I can then use this material to be able to build or upload a proposed messaging framework. In our case, this is one that we've uploaded from content I've written about myself. Who are the key personas? Who are the ICPs that I want to reach? And I can ask AI to suggest new ones, or I can build my own. And again, in the interest of time, you can see I've already uploaded several, including a Pacific Northwest and Atlantic Coast outdoor enthusiast. Again, this is a B2C market. Here's some of the goals. Here's what we know about these people. Here's some other ones that are being suggested dynamically. I can add them, legacy gift givers, and so on and so forth. Your ICPs don't change all that frequently, so this is not something that we run on an ongoing basis. But having this information in here is essential for being able to do more with marketing. So Orbit is designed to allow me to build a library of both visual assets as well as web properties that I want to drive someone towards. And so one of the new photos that we have available on the website, I'm going to add as an asset. I'm going to paste the URL in, and I can fill this out, but it can also understand how to go look at the page, figure out details about it. This is a picture that I took last March out in the North Cascades during a snowstorm of an island at the mouth of the Wenatchee River. There it is. So we can say, here's what the description is. Here's an AI written summary. I can fill out and say, what category is this? This is for a landscape. I can save this asset. With the assets I have, with the intelligence I have, I can build rich campaigns. I can also build a fairly simple one. So the example I'm going to give you right now is I can open this up. I can say, yes, save this as an image that I might want to reuse elsewhere. And down here, you'll see something called Instant Campaign. Instant Campaign allows me to say what it is that I want to do. And my campaigns can include lots of elements. They can include blog posts. They can include videos, podcasts, white papers, and email campaigns and social. So here's my message. Um, we can put that into the same objective. I can say, do I want to look at everything or only the signals in this immediate campaign? Who am I trying to reach? The next step is, what are my assets that are out there? I could filter this by categories. You can see in this case, some of the product pages that are out there. We're going to focus on Snow Island. What are the social accounts that I want to generate content for potentially? Let's say Facebook and Instagram. We could also do LinkedIn or Twitter. How long do I want this campaign to run? 14 days. It's for people, so we can send it across Saturdays, but let's leave Sundays alone and build the campaign. And it'll build out a shell campaign. Now, I can then use this to generate additional briefs, but I can also just jump ahead and say, I want you to build social posts. You can tell it's enriched by what we know about our market. And so I want you to do this from the digital assets I've given you. These are the targets. We already have our picture that's wrapped here. I can put UTM tags for those of you who are marketers. That helps me track what's going on. And the post generation will run. And so what you typically get, and I ran this on a similar image this morning, if I look at the social posts, if I open this batch, it will have generated for me proposed copy for Facebook with the link that's going to go there. I can choose to approve it or not. I can go through each of these. I can adjust the images. I can decide to do an overlay of images. So if I wanted to dynamically build different images, I could do that. And I can determine what do I want to do with these. I can say whether I want these posts, let's approve them all. If they're approved, I can then determine how do I want to distribute them. So I can take them for cut and paste. I can generate them in CSV format to push to Social Pilot, Hootsuite, or Sprout, or I can actually use Orbit itself to generate and schedule those and keep track of what's happening inside of my calendar. So you can see what we've been doing leading into the show we were at last week. These were all posts that were driven for us directly out of Orbit. The last thing that I want to just touch on here is how you can use AI in a framework like this from a sales perspective. And so from a sales perspective, we can generate collateral. So for instance, we can build a typical battle card to compare what we know about a given other organization as well as ours. Here's what their strengths are. Here's what their weaknesses are. Where do we have unique expertise? And it knows from having done research on myself that I have a lot of pictures of Whidbey, of Mount Rainier, the Cascades. I'd like to do storytelling, pros and cons, feature by feature. And you can Take this, you can export this as a PDF if you want to. That's from a sales perspective. And I think you can see that in a traditional commercial model, being able to distribute this kind of battle card to your sales team gives you a jump start in how you build the collateral for them. However, I can also use this to do outreach. And so an outreach campaign um, allows me to say, I want to have a program to go out and research something. I'm going to build a new outreach campaign, build a new campaign. Campaign name is going to be Demo August AI Dinner. What outcome do we want? We want to book 6 qualified buyers for a dinner event in Seattle. What's our core message? I've already drafted this, but you could compose this on the fly. I'm just a terrible typist. Who do we want to reach? Let's say we want to reach CIOs and heads of marketing at Microsoft partners and heads of sales. You could pick whichever ICPs you have already set up in your environment. Do we want to narrow by geographies? Let's say we want to look in Seattle. If I wanted to narrow by industries, I could. What's the call to action? Find candidates to engage us at this website. Is it tied to an event? It is tied to our Seattle conference. I want to do this on the 27th. And I want to build things that are going to sit in email or in LinkedIn. Once the campaign is built, I can say, I want you to go discover prospects, and it will go and do the same kind of web search that we talked about from a sales angle before, as well as being able to tap into some databases that we have. And what this winds up looking like, it will build a list of prospects for me, some of which have come through research, some of which I can integrate with my CRM system, and I can determine, if is it going to be appropriate for me to reach out to this person. It'll spend a minute or two, and it'll come back, and it'll give me a score. The score typically goes from 0 to 100 to let me know how relevant that person is going to be for me. And so you can see a couple folks here who've come in at a score of 20. Can say this is an infrastructure leader. It's not a CEO. So I might want to think carefully about whether or not I send something to them. So it's going to suggest that I not do anything with them. But if I wanted to compose a message, I could say, I want you to build an email message for outreach, and it will think about it. And again, it knows what my brand voice is, and I can determine what it's going to do. And it's going to tell me that it doesn't like this because this is not someone that I should send a message to. So we try to be very mindful of those rules that are out there. If I wanted to reach out to Eileen, say, by connecting with her on LinkedIn, we'll draft a message here based on everything that we know about the campaign and the person. Eileen, quick note, we're hosting a dinner for finance and ops leaders of tech on Seattle. Thought you find it valuable. We'll be open to joining. Here's a link or where to go. We don't allow us to send this automatically. You can copy the message. I can say, I want you to open the profile of this person. And then from here, I could send a connection request and type it in. But we don't want to do that automation because there should be a human involved. In the same way that the human would review the emails, we want people to be involved in those LinkedIn requests. And again, it protects you from those runaway issues that can happen when automation does too much too quickly. Just a couple of thoughts that I just wanted to leave you with as we wrap up. Researching sounds like a wonderful idea. It is harder, even with databases, to find people who are going to exactly match your ICP. So there is no automatic free lunch. There are tools that you can is to help. But these tools that we found don't completely replace the need to do prospecting and tools like Sales Navigator or the core research that you have by working your network and calling people, as well as being able to find prospects in the contents that you already have, which is why we integrate our discovery with our CRM systems. Buying information from a list, in my experience, tends to be incredibly low yield. And low yield makes sense if you've got a single product and if you're only going to get 0.0001% engagement and you're blasting 100 million people, great. Most of us don't have that luxury. So, wanted to wrap up with just pointing you to a couple of resources. If you were looking for our information on how to get to those skills, we have a fairly large public library that we've made available on GitHub, and you can get there um, by using the link that we have here, aka synozur.com/md-skills. And that's a library that includes the full sales harness, the full marketing harness, lots of everyday productivity tools that you can use for being able to build visualizations, as well as skills that you can plug into SharePoint itself. We mentioned that skill files are shared across the same framework, works across Claude Cowork, as well as Copilot Cowork. It also extends into SharePoint, and those skills in SharePoint are automatically, as the name suggests, shared. Lastly, the Orbit tool that we looked at, you can browse and see what some of its capabilities are if you go to orbit.synozur.com. Thank you all very much for joining us today. We will be distributing a link to this deck as well as to the recording over the next 24 hours. We appreciate your making time for us, and we wish you a great day and great success in the months and years to come. Thank you.